Today we have Casey, who is a wee little 4-month-old business owner. And we don't say that pejoratively. We say that to say everyone starts somewhere. And so Casey's in a position where she's trying to figure out how to grow her business sustainably because she is deeply impact oriented, but understands how much profit needs to be a piece of this for her to be able to offer the service consistently in the first place. So if you are at any juncture of wanting to grow your business, bring in more clients, and do it in a sustainable and enjoyable way, this episode is for you.
And if you're feeling pressured to network or pressured to land clients immediately, you definitely want to listen till the end and make sure you listen to all the takeaways Casey has about relieving that pressure and stress. Enjoy.
This is Your Business Hotline, where we take calls and answer questions from real business owners to help them design a business that works for the life they want.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Dara.
And together we have more than 25 years of business building experience that we are ready to share with you. Want an unusual glimpse behind the curtain of these companies? Let's get into it.
Casey, thank you so much for joining us today. We're excited to hear about your question and why you're calling in. So we'd love if you could start by telling us your challenge.
Sure. So I just started a coaching business about 4 months ago, so it's all still very new. And I'm offering one-on-one coaching, and I just started offering workshops. And in these beginning stages, I guess I have two problems, but one of my problems is that I feel like I'm a little all over the map of trying to get in front of the right people. And I know I want to focus on leaders and emerging leaders and professionals. And so I'm trying to find those people, mostly from my previous industry that I worked in. But I'm feeling like at the start of all of this, there's so many different directions that I can go with coaching. And I'm looking at what other people are doing. And all these thoughts are crossing my mind of, what's going to set me apart from all of these other people who also do executive coaching and leadership coaching? And I'm feeling like, one, it's going to take me some time to figure that out, or maybe it's not. And I don't want to go down all of these different rabbit holes that really aren't going to be what feels aligned and in the best interest of me and my business and me offering, my gifts and services to the world.
Well, I think we can relate from our early days in our businesses, and I think a lot of people listening can relate. So thank you for sharing that. Also, congratulations on starting your business. Knowing you from outside of here, I know that this is something you've wanted for a really long time, and that taking the leap from being the president of an HOA management company to doing this is a really big transition and change. So I think even just giving yourself some credit for making that transition and allowing yourself to evolve into this new space and place and idea for how you want your career to grow and the impact that you want to personally make professionally is a really big, important thing for you to recognize. And that perhaps there's lessons for you to parlay from your own experience in that to the way that you're viewing the way that you're going to grow this business, meaning you weren't sure and clear what you wanted to do or how you were going to get there, if this was a place you were ultimately going to go. And as you continued to do your diligence and, to use your words, go down certain rabbit holes, you ultimately came to a place where you recognized this was what you wanted. And I have a hunch the same thing is going to be true for you in your business, that while it's helpful to look at the marketplace and see what's out there and try to look for space that you can uniquely occupy, I also know that you are exceptional at relationship building, and that's going to be a huge differentiator because people work with coaches that they trust. They need to be able to open up the vest and get under the hood and really talk in a way that the quicker you can build trust and rapport, the better. And the fact that you are so gifted at that, that's going to be a key differentiator in and of itself. Two is, I don't know very many coaches or consultants who start and know exactly who their customer avatar, their ideal client is out of the gate, and or how they're going to position their branding. And they have to go down the rabbit holes, and that those rabbit holes are actually quite productive. So it signaled to me to call out and question, why don't you want to go down those? And my guess is, and I'd love to hear what your response is, that you don't want to waste time or you're afraid of it not being what you're looking for. But sometimes knowing what isn't right is just as valuable as getting to the thing that you know is right for you and your business.
Yeah, I think there's this idea of not wanting to lose focus on what I'm already doing. And like, for example, with these workshops, the workshops came up by me meeting with people and talking to them about coaching. And it almost just developed into, well, have you thought about doing this? And I was like, well, actually, no. And so some of these ideas have developed just from my conversations of seeing what sparks interest in other people. And I'm like, well, I guess I could develop this into more of a workshop type thing where I'm coaching a group of people. So I think the struggle is like, where's the line between going down these different avenues and seeing what's working and not just trying to chase the next best thing. I feel like there's this balance of that.
That's important. Like, we don't want you just saying, someone had this idea, I'm going to chase that and let their ideas dictate my direction. We're not asking for that at all. And it's great to have, like, we love a good theoretical or literal whiteboard of ideas where maybe right now what you're saying is, I'm doing one-on-one. I think you've told us you have 5 clients, which out of the gate, that's exceptional.
Yeah, that's great.
And that maybe you say, I do have a curiosity about workshops. And given the work that I've done with these 5 clients or ones that are going to come in, I can see exactly what the avenue would be that would help be a solution that people be looking for at a scale like that. And I would actually really enjoy delivering it. So maybe I've hit a certain baseline in my one-on-one work, and then I'm willing to put in some effort for 90 days or so towards trying to build some sort of, roster of people who would be interested in having me speak. And sometimes that means just raising your hand and saying, for free, I'd be happy to come and do it, so you can get the experience, cut your teeth, even get testimonials and feedback, which are all tremendously valuable and helpful, in order to just offer it at a price that might be something that gets their skin in the game. There's buy-in and investment, but flip side, it's not such a heavy lift that you're stressed about the price or the delivery of value, but it just gives an opportunity for you to get exposure, to cut your teeth, to see if you like this thing, and to potentially make that a gateway into one-on-one work on the back end, or not at all. But that there's so many ways that you can look at that. And so I guess my point on top of all of what we've said is, it's important for you to think about the roadmap as you're doing it, which it sounds like you are, where you have something that's working, and it sounds like you're enjoying that thing that's working, which is one-on-one. Sounds like other people are presenting ideas of things that could be useful. And the flag that I want to call in the field on that is, oftentimes people will throw ideas out, but they're not going to back them up. Meaning they may not actually want to put a credit card on the line and say, great, and now we're going to pay for you to do that thing. And that, there's a jillion ideas and people's opinions are plentiful. But what actually might be the thing you want to do that matches a market need that someone's willing to consistently pay for, that you also want to consistently bring in business around, may or may not be the same thing. And once you've answered the questions that you can answer on the side of the equation, then it's about, when in the time frame of my strategic execution am I interested and willing to give that thing a go and give it a try. And I think a piece here we haven't talked about is that you haven't gone full in on this, which I'm actually applauding. It's not by any means a judgment. It's that you have stable income coming from another side endeavor, correct?
Yeah, I actually have a full-time marketing job right now while I'm building this. And I'm so glad you brought this up, because my idea with these workshops is that eventually, like, my name is going to get out there for people to potentially do one-on-one coaching with me. So I'm thinking of that as an avenue. And right now with my one-on-one coaching, I don't have nearly enough clients for it to be bringing enough revenue for me to not have this other full-time job. And like right now, my coaching is a side hustle. And so I'm thinking about all of those things and trying to figure out, like, okay, what are some things I can do right now to get in front of more people at one time, because I don't have all this time to be coaching 20 or 30, one-on-one clients. So I'm trying to figure out, based on me just being at the start of this, the income that I have coming in, what's going to work right now for my lifestyle and the time that I have to invest in my business.
Well, and I think something that's important too, Casey, you mentioned, how do I differentiate myself? How do I set myself apart? Because no matter what avenue you choose of workshops or one-on-one coaching or retreats or whatever it is, the most important thing is what are we delivering through that modality, through that platform? And so something that I think has provided a lot of clarity and insight to folks we've talked to is, what do you want the result to be? What do we want people to have achieved at the end of working with you or through working with you if they're going to continue to work with you for a long time? And that distinguishing element, I think, is so important. So like I went to a networking event the other night and someone was like, oh, you're the business minimalist. And it was like, that was something that there's thousands of business coaches. There's a bunch of people you could follow on Instagram, but there's a select few of us talking about how to make your business really simple and streamlined. And so deciding that avenue was kind of putting my flag in the sand, so to speak, of like, okay, I'm doing this specifically. You're going to get this specific result. If that speaks to you, it makes it easier for that person to decide. So whether that's like, health coaches that focus on fertility or PCOS, or, whether you're a financial guru who's focused on helping people be financially free. I think when you have the specific result you're looking for or the flavor of coaching you're doing within executive coaching, that actually creates a lot of clarity in all of these areas, because then you say, okay, the type of person that wants this result, what's the way to deliver it to them that feels really good? What's the ultimate, conversations we're going to be having, topics I'm posting about on Instagram, things I'm discussing on a podcast? All of those things become much more clear when we know what that result is. So I'm wondering if you have at this time a specific outcome or result you're looking for your clients that could provide some of that clarity.
It's almost this idea of keeping in mind how I want to make. I know with my coaching, the reason I got into this is that I want to feel like I'm making a difference. And through my own experience with coaching, it helped me so much gain confidence and overcome limiting beliefs and start thinking about my life in this different way that made me trust myself. And I want to help people with those intangible things that are required whether you're a professional or in a leadership position, that come up with growth and pushing yourself out of your comfort zones. And so I know that I'm just glad you said that, because I know, like, me speaking in front of 100 people, I'm not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. Me helping people dive into what's holding them back and figuring out, their limiting beliefs and overcoming fear and self-doubt. I know that takes time. And so I think that's important for me to keep in mind on this journey that I'm on, that I did this because I want to help make a difference. And that's what makes me feel fulfilled at the end of the day. And of course, I need to make money while I'm doing it too. But I'm glad you said that,
We're big believers in the intersection of profit and impact. So you can absolutely do that. I also hear in you something that I hear a lot of times, which becomes a reason that people start their businesses, which is that they basically want to help someone who's on an earlier stage of their own development, and they want to go back and be the support for that. So when you say that that's your mission, that's great. What you're also really saying from like a copywriting or a marketing perspective is you want to help people overcome those limiting beliefs and self-doubt and imposter syndrome so that they can fill in the blank, like be the best leader they can be, grow their impact business, have the best fill in the blank. And to Kate's point, something that people really get wrong, and I hope that we can spell this out very clearly today, is that people think, well, I need to know exactly who the customer avatar is, and that means it's the demographic. So they might say, I want to help people who identify as women between the ages of 18 and 27 who live in this region to, blah, 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 who make this much money. And you're like, okay, what are you actually helping them to do? Could that person be non-binary or male identifying? Could they live overseas? Could they make less but be willing to exchange their hard-earned money for the value that they perceive the thing you offer? The answer across the board is yes. So certainly there may come a time where you get more honed in and see that there's a pattern to the people that you coach and the demographic becomes more clear. What really matters, especially at this stage, is the psychographic, meaning the problem that you're helping them overcome to get to the desired solution that they are seeking.
Yep.
And then that can look like a lot of things. What you have going for you on top of what we've talked about is you have a lot of depth of relationships and industry credibility and knowledge within this HOA and property management space. And I think about some clients that we've had together who were coaches where they would focus on only financial services professionals because that's where they had a heart, because that's where they came from, and because that's where their network was. Or ones who coach only chiefs of staff because that was their background in the Fortune 500 arena. And they had this unique skill set on top of their coaching skills to do that. And so you may ultimately decide or not, like, I want to double down on a space that I already have the network and the reach and the credibility and the understanding. But at the end of the day, for you to be able to say so clearly, this is the problems or these are the challenges that I'm going to help you overcome. It doesn't matter how old you are. Like, I mean, if I can say, case sake, I worked with you and your dad. Like, those are two very different demographics. Your dad is retired and you were at an earlier stage in your career, making a huge career shift. So if I was so focused on I can only work with XYZ demographic, I would have missed out on the opportunity to support both of you.
Okay, so I have a question then, in regard to everything that you just said. So right now, my clients are all over the map. They're retirees, they're people starting their own businesses, they're business owners, they're community managers from the HOA industry that I worked in. And so I'm trying to figure out, so I'm part of this Women's Chamber of Commerce in my city. And there's all of these different organizations that I can get involved with. And you're saying, I guess the question is, where's the line of finding, especially in the beginning when I'm still kind of trying to figure out who that person's going to be, and there's not a lot of limits right now. Where do you put your focus in terms of putting yourself out there to the world and networking and going to the right places and not stretching yourself too thin?
I mean, and Dara's the networking expert, as probably everyone listening to this knows. So I want to make sure she can speak to that piece. But I'll also say, at least from my personal experience, like, go for the lowest hanging fruit. Like, yeah, it could be my mom's neighbor. It could be the dog walker. There are a million people that could benefit from what I'm doing. But what's most likely? If we're talking about executive coaching, well, yeah, my neighbor could be an executive and I could be working with him, but I could also speak of a room of 10,000 executives. It's like, I think we always aim for the lowest hanging fruit or the thing that we think most people are going to have in common and speak to that. And then inevitably, you're going to have conversations that lead to you working with other people. But ultimately, there are places that that's the best use of your time, in addition to some of those random people that are going to hit you up in the DMs or find you on the street.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to discern what are the format or formats that you enjoy and how do you utilize your, introversion versus extroversion scale to the best of your ability. So, I used to host many 100-person networking events because at that stage of my life, I enjoyed that and that was effective. And not only did that ultimately become its own product and service offering, but that was a great pipeline of business for other things in my other companies. That being said, as I got older and I was like, that's not how I want to spend my time, my energy has veered tremendously towards the introversion side of the scale. I much preferred more intimate environments where I thought, let me go have a one-on-one with someone. Let me just catch up over a phone call or a coffee meeting, which much better fit not only my proclivities that way, but also my timing. Like, I didn't want to be at after hours drinking events. I didn't want to be up early in the morning, and that you can choose where those things are. And that you don't have to go to places like just because executives are there. If you don't enjoy them, don't feel like you can be yourself. And to remember, especially with coaching is it's a service, and it meaning like you are of service. And one of the most applicable ways I've seen to, quote, convert people from, hey, we have no relationship or some relationship, to potential coaching is to just be the curious question asker that you are anyway. Yeah. Trying to get to know who this person is and what their needs are. It's not even about positioning who you are, who it's for, what the problem solution statement is, because that's the side of sales that's not going to be super applicable in those types of environments or for this type of challenge. It's more so when someone's like, wow, I just really opened up to you quickly. Yeah. Or there's something here. Wow, you've helped someone, like you told a story perhaps about a client you helped get from point A to point B. That they're like, I see myself in that, or someone on my team could really use that. Could we have another conversation? Because that's something that we see all the time, Kate and I, as a hurdle that people don't seem to understand, where we don't want you in any sort of networking environment, at a group event, at a one-on-one, if you curate a group of people to get together, where you think like that's where the deal gets done. No,
Yes.
that's where the relationship is initiated or expanded upon. But really what happens from there, it's about how many conversations can you have outside of that are either explicitly like, hey, I could support you in that. Why don't we just set up a complimentary call, which basically is a consult, but really you're just offering 30 minutes or an hour of your time to support someone so they can get a real taste and feel for what you do. And that is a great investment, both for you to cut your teeth and feel comfortable and confident in what you're doing, as well as for them to get the real flavor of what you're doing and feel like, wow, I see the value in this now. I'm not just having to guess what the value of this is. Or for you to just simply say, I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to talk to you more about XYZ. And we never want to impose ourselves as a coach on someone, but to offer like, hey, actually, I'm hearing you say this. Would you be open to feedback, or would you be open to me asking more questions and letting people give their consent to move forward into a path? And at some point, you can introduce it very explicitly and say, actually, what we're doing is what coaching is. And I'm hearing you say that your goals are A, B, and C, and I could absolutely support you in doing that. Would you want to talk more about what that could look like? I think that idea of invitational selling and relational selling is so different than the idea of I need to show up in a space and have my elevator pitch ready and know exactly who I'm searching for and exactly where I'm taking them. That's helpful on your website. That's helpful in certain places, but that's not where your business is coming from. And it's not where most of it's going to come from for the foreseeable future, which is actually a great thing. I think that people overemphasize the digital marketing pieces when really they're hiding.
Yes.
Instead of just having the conversations and building that trust and rapport and understanding what someone's needs are and serving and serving and serving. Another way I like to look at it is, how many no's can you get? Like, how many conversations can you go out and have to get no's of, oh, I don't know someone, or it's not a fit for me, or it doesn't even come up? Because at least you're engaging in the conversations, and just simply statistically, the more at bat, so to speak, you're going to have, the more likely you are to have that fruit fall from the low part of the tree, like Kate's saying. And that's going to really pay off versus going out with the opposite intention of, I have to get clients. And then there's the fear of, you're probably going to start holding yourself back because you're too afraid of the no.
Well, and then you get so in your head. I'm so glad that you brought this up, and this is really resonating with me, because I know that I'm my best when I'm just being myself. And I got into this coaching because I believe in it and I want to help people. And it comes from this really genuine place of like, I just want to make a difference and help people and share these tools that helped me so much. And when I'm in networking situations, I notice myself, there's so many different advice you get when it comes to sales and closing the deal. And when I'm too focused on that, it doesn't go well and I don't feel good about it. And so I'm glad you brought up this whole idea of, I think you called it relational selling, where you don't have to be this salesperson that we all see, in the movies, or, get taught, you have to close the deal and you have to say it in this certain way, that there's other ways to do it. And I think that's something that I'm still figuring out in terms of networking and sharing what I'm doing, but also having it feel authentic to me.
Well, and I'm really glad Dara brought up the assumptions or the pervasive narrative we have about selling and marketing and on the digital space, because just as often people ask about, well, should I be on Instagram or LinkedIn or TikTok? And it's like, where do you feel good? Because ultimately, I know most people have a LinkedIn and have an Instagram. It's not like there's people that have LinkedIns and people that have Instagrams and we're not cross-pollinating those groups. And also people are like, I posted one reel, where are the clients? And it's like, no, the whole point of this is not to sell. The point is to add value. And the more and more and more you can add value, you're naturally going to be selling what you're doing because people are going to get something out of it. So I think that same mentality applies not only to in-person events and being curious, but also online. People will be saying, oh, I haven't had any consults. And then I go to their Instagram, there's 30 unreplied to comments. And it's like, you had this opportunity to engage with all these people. They've all commented on this thing and you aren't engaging with them. You've created a monologue instead of a dialogue. And because of that, people aren't hitting you up in the DMs because they've been trying to have that conversation with you on your post. And so I think sometimes it's almost laughable how obvious it is that it's like, oh yeah, I can share what I'm doing and I love doing that and I love helping people. Well, if you continue to help people, naturally people are going to find out about you. So whether it is digital space or in person, if we're getting curious, if we're adding value, if we're making connections, regardless of where it is, we are going to find those people. And it doesn't have to be this prescribed post 7 times on LinkedIn and post 3 times. And after we do this, you're going to get X number of sales. It's like, let's just be a human. Like, especially if we're talking about coaching, let's be a person that's trying to be helpful and add value. And naturally, that's going to come back to us.
Well, and it takes off all this pressure. Like, as you're saying all this and I'm hearing this, it's like this weight feels like it's lifted off my shoulders, because I think I've been trying to like fit into this box of what I think I'm supposed to be doing, and like remembering that me adding value, me being myself, me getting curious, because I love doing that. And I'm a genuinely curious person who's interested in other people and helping them. Like, it doesn't have to be so hard.
Well, for you, the opportunity to tell your story is so profound. People connect and relate to stories. And while you're doing this with other people, it's very powerful for you to be able to say, I had never had coaching. I wasn't entirely sure what coaching was. I came in like A and I left like B. And I was so inspired by that now that's what I do with my career, so I can help other people to do the same thing. That to me is not selling. That's something where I'm like, that's memorable. And I want to hear more about that and ask you questions and maybe taste some of that as well for myself.
Mm-hmm.
We're like, yep, mic
Yeah,
drop. That
exactly. I mean, so all that to sort of wrap to where you started this conversation, you were saying you have limited time. You're not sure where to focus. I feel like actually you were closer to it than you even realized, because you're doing a lot of these things already.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about how you think you want to utilize the time that you have outside of the full-time job to continue to grow your coaching business.
So first thing that comes to mind is these workshops that I have planned at the beginning of the year. So I have 2 planned at the beginning of the year. It feels right. It feels like I can make an impact in a small group setting and still be myself, still feel like I can get to know people, and it's not this 100-person speaking event. And I want to go with that. And maybe it's opportunities that evolve into one-on-one coaching. And then when it comes to networking, I think a big thing is mindset, like going in, and I talked about it before, but not putting so much pressure of fitting into this box of closing the deal and selling, and just telling my story and being myself, because it's the truth and it'll make an impact. And 3, when it comes to networking, I think finding smaller groups that I can be a part of, whether it's like a book club or whatever the case may be, but I like to really connect with people on a deeper level. And that typically happens in a smaller setting. And so maybe I don't have to go to these big networking events where 200 people are there and I feel like it's, hard to talk to anyone. And so I think finding things in my community that, one, I enjoy, and it's a smaller group setting where I'm actually getting to know people, like that feels like I can be myself when it comes to networking.
I think that's a really great actionable plan that fits with your personality. It fits with the time that you have available, and it fits with your offering. We don't need you to be having transactional interactions with people for something that's such a relational offer.
Exactly. And I think one thing that's important to keep in mind too is a lot of times we'll go to these events, have these conversations, and maybe it's a month and we haven't seen any of those people convert. Dare and I both have had people where they've been following us for 5 years, 6 years sometimes. And we're not saying that everyone's operating on that timeline, but you do have people that will convert immediately, sometimes in the room. And then you have people that are just kind of lurking behind the scenes and they're watching and they're continuing to pay attention. So if you find like, hey, none of these conversations are converting into what I thought, or I'm posting all this stuff on Instagram, but no one's dropping in my DMs, it could be the very next post or the very next conversation that leads to the floodgates. But ultimately, you are building momentum. And like Dara said, the more shots you take, the more likely you are to have a goal. And so ultimately, we want to make sure that we're continuing to do this, because if you continue to build that momentum, things are going to come, and everyone's 5-year timeline is different. So the person that heard about me 5 years ago, there may be someone today that's going to work with me in 3 years that's listening to this. And so I say that to say it's easy to get discouraged if we feel like there's not immediate results. And I think a lot of times we live in a culture where we have instant gratification, and know that building this takes time. And ultimately, we want to be putting down that foundation and be thoughtful about how we're having those conversations, which doesn't always equate to someone's buying in the room, someone shaking the hand, giving the credit card, because that's, again, like Dara said, not even appropriate sometimes for the type of service you're offering. So allowing it to take time, especially if you have a full-time job, and allowing it to come to fruition in a way that feels really good to you, I think is a really great thing to be focusing on in this particular stage of your business and career.
Okay, I needed to hear that because I needed to hear that because it's funny you brought that up, because about a month ago, there was a week where I had 3 people sign up with me in 1 week, and I was feeling really good. And I think a lot of me questioning, am I doing the right things? Am I networking? Am I part of networking right? Am I part of the right groups? Is coming from, I'm having a little bit of a lull right now. And I'm starting to question, if I need to shift focus. And so I'm so glad. I feel like I needed to hear you and hear that reminder that people have been following you for 6 years, and they don't, it takes time to convert someone to a customer, and, everyone's on a different timeline. I think that's a great reminder, because it's easy to get distracted, or, when things aren't going well, try and focus on too much at one time.
You can't allow short-term information to dictate your long-term decision making. So
Boom.
this idea of you saying, I've been in business for 4 months and I've had a couple slower weeks, that's not a pattern
Yes.
at all. That's not even a season.
Yeah.
So
That's
true.
a blip. And so to allow that to overtake the way that you feel, and then let that feeling dictate the way you'd move forward in your business, no. I wouldn't typically say that, but just no. That is something that's not going to serve you well. And it's a great reminder for you as you strengthen the muscles that you're going to need to continue to grow this business over time, that there will always be these seasons. I use this metaphor way too much, but it's because it's true that if we look at nature and we look at the 4 seasons, they are not all harvest and reap seasons.
Yes.
Winter is a real season where things look like they are death and dire, but they're not. They're actually regenerating, and the roots are getting stronger and deeper. And you don't see the bear going in the cave being upset of like, well, gosh, why do I have to go in this cave for all? It's like, great, I'm going to rest. And then I'm going to go out and hunt and get my food and see the, rewards for my time doing that. So instead of saying, oh, this is showing me that something's wrong, look at it differently and say, great, what can I be doing with this time that I have available? And how can I allow that to be something that keeps me moving through whatever season I'm in? I could just keep harping on this.
I love that.
And I think
I love that, because I know there's going to be longer seasons where I feel this way, and the way I react to it makes such a difference in when I am meeting with people and I'm in this mindset of, am I doing the wrong things? Do I need to change, what I'm saying to people? That doesn't work, because then I'm not being myself, and then I'm just in my head.
Yes.
Absolutely. And I was actually just talking to one of the folks in our studio before we hopped on this call, and they were asking where most of my business comes from. And when I think back to it, like, some of the most crazy interactions have led to so many clients. Like, I had a spin instructor that turned into a friend that literally has led me to probably $50,000 worth of revenue from 4 different clients over, a period of months because of our relationship. And it's like, no one's walking into spin class being like, oh, I bet I'm going to get $50,000 out of this. Like, no, you just show up and you put on the persona that you feel good about having for your business. Like we were talking about earlier, like you have this certain frame of how you want to present to your clients, how you want to present to the world. Like you need to have that all the time. Like, I don't know if anyone, this might be too TikTok-y of a reference, but Keith Lee is this like food reviewer that goes in incognito and reviews restaurants. And it's like the way to get him to have a good review for you is to be good all the time, is to be good to everyone all the time. And it's like, I think that's such a great message to take away in business is if I'm showing up as the person I want to be, or as I want my clients to see me all the time, then I'm going to have a much more higher conversion rate or much more success in my business because people are always consuming and talking to friends about things and making those connections. And so it's not just the networking event and then, oh, I get to go be off, if you will. But ultimately, you're going to be able to build those connections in a myriad of situations, regardless of if it's a technical networking event or not.
Well, to that point, we also can't allow those quick outcomes or those perceived responses to what we're doing dictate what we're doing either, because I can't tell you how many people that maybe were even the people I was afraid to share what I did because they were that like fake perceived voice in my head of that person from high school. You always say like Sally Sue, who I was like, they're going to judge, who, 6 years later are the ones that come back and are like, I've actually been lurking in the background. I never really interact with your stuff. And to be honest, I kind of thought it was hooey in the beginning, but now I totally get it and I want to hire you. That if I had let that voice be the thing that dictated how I showed up, or if I had put that post out or shown up at that place and felt like, that didn't really resonate, or that person it didn't really click with, or I feel weird because people didn't respond as well to that post as they did to this post, whatever the circumstances might be, that would have been so foolhardy because again, I'm letting these pieces of data that are not accurate or actual patterns or things that are being driven by what I want versus me just trying to respond to how other people feel or doing comparisons or self-judging dictate how I move forward to be ridiculous. And I think so much of this path for us in general as business owners, specifically as coaches, is that, and I think it's one of the biggest gifts, is that you have to be in the work yourself to be a person of integrity and non-hypocrisy when you're offering the work. So each time you catch these things, it's an invitation and opportunity for you, Casey, to be going deeper on the work yourself, because that's going to make you a stronger coach too. And frankly, you're going to burn yourself out along the way if you're not continuing to fine tune your skills and seeing that these are the opportunities that you'd be pulling out in coaching sessions with your people too.
Yeah, it's this idea of like getting curious of my own feelings and what's coming up for me through this process, just like I did when I was coaching and I do with my coaching clients. It's so, so important and good reminder.
I like to look at everything like a scavenger hunt, where instead of it being like, there's not enough, it's more like, well, what could happen and what's the possibility here and how can this be gamified? And it just makes it a lot more fun and more discovery oriented than like, is this working or is that not working? Or do I need to hold this so tightly or take it so seriously? So I would just loosen the grip.
Yeah. And I think it really forces you to be more authentic, because if you have to continue to show up that way, it's like, okay, well, what do I really want to be doing? And it just like, you get more and more information the more you do it about how you want to be showing up, who you want to be working with. And sometimes it breaks down that facade of what we thought we were going to be doing. And we're like, actually, no, it feels best for me to be showing up in the world this way. And that feels sustainable. And it's probably more authentic to you than that version you had in your head when you first started.
Yeah, it's like this reminder that I am just at the beginning stages of this journey, and it's going to be a long journey of figuring out and getting curious about what's working, but not putting so much pressure on that this one decision or this one thing I am going to do is going to dictate the outcome of it all, because I am just at the beginning stages and there is going to be a lot of discovery, like you said, Dara, that happens through this process of growing a business.
Absolutely. So Casey, I feel like there's been a lot that we've discussed and talked about. Is there one thing that you're either taking away or one action that you know you're going to take after this call that kind of came from the discoveries we've made today?
Gosh, so many things. You guys presented so many good tips and information. And I think the biggest thing is just showing up as myself and not putting so much pressure on comparing myself to what other people are doing, and knowing that it's just all part of the journey. And when I'm showing up authentically, that's what's going to be the best thing for me.
which you say just. I understand that in and of itself can be a challenge for, different times, different circumstances, different environments within ourselves. So continue to move in that direction. I think you will see and garner the best results that way, and you will enjoy the process a hell of a lot more as you continue on that path.
And keep us updated too. We always like hearing how people, use this information and then move into the world and the rest of their business. So please keep us updated on any new things that come your way.
I will. I'm sure there's going to be a bunch of reflection and things that come out of this that I don't even realize in the moment right now. So thank you both.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thanks.
That was a very, I think, important conversation we just had with Casey, because if anyone comes into this podcast and they're listening and they're thinking, how do I grow my business? And maybe I have limited time, or I have misconceptions of networking, or, I don't want to do digital marketing, or I don't feel like I'm seeing the outcomes that I'm looking for. There's so much that can be pulled from this episode.
Totally. And I think two common questions people come to us with is like, what is my niche? Who am I serving? And I think they think it's going to be the demographics like you mentioned, when really it should be based on the results, based on what value you want people to have. Because like you said, you could be working with a 60-year-old retiree or a 20-year-old new business owner. And a lot of the takeaways can be similar because of the transformation they want. And so don't get stuck in this rut of I have to work with XYZ type of person, or they have to have this specific thing, or live in Toledo, or whatever it is. It can be just whatever that transformation needs to be for them. And then the other thing is, if you're marketing or you're selling, or some advice some guru gives you doesn't feel right, it's probably not right. It's probably not right for you. There's so many different ways to market your business. There's so many different ways to put yourself out there. And to assume that you have to do something that feels uncomfortable in order to make a sale, one, you're going to burn out. It's not sustainable. But two, know that there are so many people that have businesses they really love and are able to sell in a way that feels really good to them.
Exactly. At the end of the day, with a lifestyle-led business, that needs to be driven by some of these preferences and proclivities of you as the business owner, if not by many of them, and where that dovetails and overlaps with the market need, what people are willing to pay for, and to allow yourself the discovery process of what that is. Like Casey coming in at 4 months in and putting this pressure on herself that is unnecessary of, I need to know exactly this and that and the other. I understand, especially when you look at people who are on their theoretical mile 10 and you're on your first step. That's not a fair comparison. And that's one of those places where comparison can become really detrimental versus fuel to help you move forward. So I also want to speak to the demographic and psychographic thing, because if you have people, let's say, that are doing your branding for you and they're saying, nope, we need to know so we can pick your brand colors and make your logo and know exactly what your brand voice is, pause. It's not time to know that yet. And you don't need all of those digital collateral in the first place. You might not ever need that. Like, I am a big fan of the idea of Hitch businesses, meaning the movie Hitch with Will Smith, where you can be the best kept secret, where you don't even have to have any sort of digital identity, because people just talk so positively about the outcomes that you generate that you could have a very sustainable and viable and profitable business. And sure, those things are nice and they're helpful, but do not let that be the forcing function to say, well, I need to know today exactly what those things are. That's a safe place to hide. And what we love to talk about is junk food productivity, of those empty calories of things you're, quote, checking off in your business that are not actually moving you closer to what matters for you to have a business, which is bringing in revenue and making the impact that you're looking to make.
Exactly. You get stuck in this productive procrastination where you feel like you're working on your business, but really you're stalling doing the thing you really like to do. And one thing we didn't mention in this conversation and episode that I think is so important is, one of the best ways to network is to talk to other folks who you know are going to champion you. Dara and I run this group MYB, and the best part of it is to see people be like, wait, but what do you need? Proactively wanting to help people. And so it doesn't always have to be a stuffy networking event or selling when you feel like there's some resistance. There are tons of people that love helping other people and finding communities where people want to support you. I would say, this is a random number, but off the top of my head, I think it's probably 60% of my business comes from other business owners
Yes.
who realize it's so helpful to be connecting with each other and supporting each other. And they know it's going to come back to them tenfold because someone's going to come to me and I'll realize it's a good match for someone else. And so being that connector and finding groups where people value that, I think is also so important.
Well, and even more specifically, if we want to drill that down, oftentimes the people who are going to send you the most business are who you might perceive as your competition.
Yeah.
Because their roster is going to fill up.
Yep.
It's not a fit for them. The price point's wrong. The chemistry is not there.
Yep.
But someone's already raised their hand and self-identified as, I need this thing now,
Yep.
and I'm already on the market for it. So to get that introduction to you from that is a much more likely version or rate of success than just randomly going out to an event and trying to meet someone and hope that you've hit the point of consumer psychology where they not only are aware of the need, but they have the timing and the resources that are appropriate and that they're a fit for you, what you offer, and that you two click.
Exactly. So I think the biggest takeaway is all the pressure you're feeling around finding your niche, going to networking events, selling in a way you don't want to, let it drain away. Business can be fun, business can be enjoyable. And I think, the two of us are living proof that you can operate in a way and work in a way that feels really good to you. Maybe not all the time, but most of the time.
Truth. We'll see you next time.
That's it.
Thanks for listening to Your Business Hotline. If you liked what you heard, please subscribe, rate, review, and share with business owners just like you.